My first year as a building inspector had me inside a community center on the older side of town. The building was a decrepit relic of foggy windows and stained bricks, nature reclaiming what was left of the outside stonework. Inside was a hallway that led to a single large room with a small stage in the back. Behind it was another hallway. Both halls had a few rooms connected to them, but the one with the white tape across it was pressed far against the back of the building. A white strip of tape across the floor gap of the door, another covering the right side gap, firmly stuck to both ends despite the tape's obvious age. I did not know the rule against opening marked doors until I had already opened it. The door was unlocked and released a metallic clicking sound as the latch snapped back, the tape pulling away like the cracking of old limbs. The door swung outward, and beyond the 3-inch gap I had opened, I could see the edge of a single school desk, clouded in dust ignited by the thin hallway light. Its desk chair wasn't visible, but the thing sitting in it was. A silhouette, dark, blurry, unmoving. Something piled up in that chair. Something that looked so much like a... The door slammed. Beside me was a wrinkled old leather face of a man in blue overalls, staring with bloodshot eyes opened in horrified judgment, hand still pressing the door firmly into its frame, running his fingers over the tape in an attempt to reseal it.
"Don't they teach you idiots anything anymore?"
were his only words, and he acknowledged none of my own. This was my first experience with the things I would come to know simply as marked doors. Years of inquiries toward my supervisors, peers, and even building managers themselves all led to the same answers. No one knew why. No one really cares. They are backroom closets, unused maintenance rooms, or rooms that don't even have a name. Tucked back into large buildings, out of sight, forgotten about for years until the marking tape finds its way onto it. But someone's marking these doors. Someone's keeping something in them, right? Years of curiosity towards these doors came to an abrupt end, however, about 2 years ago. A defunct warehouse in the industrial part of town. It was old and needed to be inspected before the owner could sell it or tear it down. I arrived midday, the summer sun already low in the clear sky. Shadows cast from small hollow shells of concrete littered across the property, gutted long ago from whatever use they had. A handful of small trees were already doing their part to destroy what remained of the parking lot. Tall and thin dry grass that encompassed every inch of the place now began to eat its way into the asphalt and concrete. It was a metallic shell. Thin sheet metal walls with concrete slabs to fit the thin panel windows. All rusted, cracked, shattered, stained, and covered in overgrowth. A concrete path from the parking lot was nearly indistinguishable from the overgrown fields surrounding the building, the sidewalk being torn apart from each crack and crevice by the field grass that grew wherever it could. The sun sunk deeper behind the trees now, and cold, indirect sunlight began to hide the hideousness of the building. Tall grass moving like waves with each billow of wind, the building groaning and creaking from the temperature drop, and I could hear the sudden slamming of metallic shutters as the wind passed through. I hadn't left the parking lot yet, but I already knew there was no hope left for this place. The metallic handle was cold to the touch, the heavy door not eager to remove itself from the old compressed frame it sat in. A cloud of dust formed and the door finally gave, slamming open after grating against the frame. Something else slammed too, on the opposite side of the building, maybe inside of it. Another door, or shutter from the wind, I thought. Another slam from the same end, something heavy dropping inside. I stood still for a moment. Door wide opened. the sounds echoing through the hollow interior that stood almost entirely in darkness. A few moments, and the wind gained dominion over my hearing again, the buildings groaning and creaking, reverberating throughout the structure as I stepped in, my eyes adjusting to the newfound darkness. What little light illuminated the structure only came from the grid windows sat high against the ceiling, caked in years of dirt and neglect. The sun only illuminating the back of the interior, silhouetting everything between us. I'd come through the main entrance. To my right looked like some kind of office. To the left was the workers' common area, completely connected to the main working floor. Old empty crates and machinery sat against thin concrete dividing walls that didn't reach the ceiling. A metal catwalk with more offices sat high in the back corner, barely distinguishable in the darkness. The ground floor was a maze of walls that stood no more than 9 feet. Despite its size and hollow nature, its only open area was the ceiling and a diagonal hallway that led through the maze of walls. Something caught my eye there, in the hallway. From the entrance, I could see straight down it toward the back of the building. If not for the darkness, I might have been able to make out what I saw. Something moved. A door slowly creaked open with a heavy wind gust, catching my attention before I saw it. Darkness obscured it, but I could point out 4 thin moving parts. Limbs? Legs? They looked far too thin, too straight, like sticks. It must have been a deer or something sneaking in here. But why couldn't I see its body? Slowly, I started down the hallway, finally turning on my flashlight and placing my attention on the door that had creaked open. Only halfway open, and something was keeping it that way. Something stuck to the bottom of the door. It was tape. Torn and flared tape. Brown, but obviously white at some point. Barely able to hold the door in place before tearing as I pulled it further open. A marked door. Open. Empty. Dark as the rest of the rooms in this place, and just as dusty. Nothing was inside, at all. An empty concrete room with stained gray floors. An echo produced from the end of the walkway. Tapping. Steps. Hard and sharp against the concrete before fading away. Darkness consumed the entire building, the sun dropping below the horizon. Any natural light now dissipating. Stepping outside of that room, I looked down the hallway, trying to remember which way I'd come from. Both ends were encased in a darkness that my small light could not penetrate. Dust formed throughout the building, like thick fog. Breathing became a nuisance. Then I heard it. The tapping again. It came from the far end of the building. The end of the hall. Another door moved, cracking and grating like it hadn't been opened for years. There was no wind this time. A cloud of dust formed ahead of me, and 2 strips of torn white tape illuminated with the light of my flashlight. Tapping, again, closer this time. Then steps. Steps on a metal floor, the catwalk above me. I stopped at the end of the hallway and saw the second marked door cracked open. Panning the light across the space, crowded with ambiguous objects and machinery. More strips of light revealed themselves. Dirty white tape lining the sides of almost every door ahead. All appeared to still be closed. Then the tapping returned. Like hoofs on concrete, 4 steps at a time, 4 limbs moving across the room. But I still saw nothing. Then the familiar sound returned, reverberating through the building and my ears as the door was violently pulled from its latch, slamming against the wall. Dust made seeing anything besides the reflective tape impossible, but I could still hear it. Another slam, another door flung open, and another. One by one, I watched the tape disappear, leaving only a beam of dust from my weak flashlight. The walls around the doors, even in darkness, appeared a little more gray than the cavity of black that lied beyond their frames. It moved again. My flashlight reflected something else in the darkness, fading and returning, barely recognizable as they seemed to float like orbs across the floor. Like glowing orbs. Eyes. The light was reflecting off its eyes. Their eyes. What was a single pair became 3, then 5, then 6. Each moved in and out of the flashlight's influence with the tapping. More came from the darkness beyond the marked doors. The tapping soon filled the room, and I began to realize it didn't sound like hooves anymore. The flashlight died, and their sound continued. My eyes burned from dust in the darkness, but I was too afraid to move. The sound of my own heartbeat echoed louder than the tapping of their hoofs, and I struggled to even blink. Aiming my flashlight once again and hitting it hard against the handle, it struggled, flickering. I hit it again, and for a moment the light shined even brighter than before. For a heartbeat, that light ignited the room before shutting off again. And I could see it. Them. Children, men, and women. The white of their skin only made the darkness of their eyes more apparent. But I could only see the torsos and the faces. No arms or legs, yet they stood taller than I. There was something there, but they were too dark, too thin. Their expressionless gazes set on me the moment the light hit them before almost immediately shutting off, and the tapping began again. My first slow steps backwards were met with a frenzied reaction. The flashlight died, shattering on the concrete as I turned and sprinted toward the front door. The sounds, their tapping, their chittering, it filled the building. On metal, concrete, and glass, I could hear them moving. Were they looking for me? I slammed against something hard but kept going until my shoulder broke through the front door and I was outside. No sooner did I hear another slam, another door break open. No later was I in my car and away from that place. A large gash in my arm formed from where I slammed against sharp metal while running out of that place. I remember the dust burning my eyes for days after. Was it the dust? Was it something else? I couldn't know. But unfortunately, my job was not over yet. The building was marked to be destroyed. Before that occurred, however, I had to return to the place with a project supervisor, inspecting the outside area one last time in preparation. My supervisor did not know why I stared at the rear door, slammed open, with such intent. He did not know why the trail of matted grass and deep animal prints were significant. He could not hear my heart dropping as we inspected the open front and back doors, and I saw the remnants of ragged white tape on both of them.